similar to how a tree for the first like 50 years or whatever absorbs a whole bunch of CO2, but then it hits a point where it starts secreting it again. And so it's like the creation of the music is that process of like taking a lot of this bad stuff and recycling it and turning it into good stuff. And then the actual distribution and, you know, like general consumption of art is where things can kind of flip back the other way, and then like the negative kind of seeps back out of it. Sometimes it just works as is. You don't have to really think about it too much. And I think that's a big thing about being an artist, is knowing when to call it quits. What's up, guys? I'm Owen Hooper. I go by Mouth Breather. We have a lot of great gear here, and I used pretty much none of it. I actually brought my acoustic guitar from home today. I just ended up using Logic Pro with stock plugins, and I think there's some sort of metaphor there or something that, or some sort of like anyone can make music. Why have I chosen to make music with my life? Now that's a great question, and there's really no good answer to something as ridiculous as that. But I think that it's fun. It's kind of like Lego. I think that especially with like DAWs and shit like this, it's like, this is like children using a collage, like using cardboard paper and glue to make a collage. It's really primal and childlike to create, especially now digitally. I feel like if you had to use tape machines, it would be a real pain in the ass, but you can just do whatever you want. If you think of a sound, you should use it. Like, I used to sample a lot of Canadian television from like the 60s and 70s. If you don't have fun, it's probably the worst choice in your life. Like, you should not be making things if you're not enjoying doing it, because it's a lot of work, and it's really like, there's no rules, and there's no, every sort of like parameter of goodness or badness is entirely objective. So you're gonna just die of an anxiety attack hoping that there's validation in what you do, and you won't get it. So you really want to make sure you're having a good time. Otherwise, it's gonna probably kill you. It is really fun, though. It's the funnest shit in the world. Yeah. Okay, it's great. But now the thing is, I could if you just listen to this, right?
I see.
Sometimes things can exist in a vacuum of themselves. It adds a little bit more.
She says she wants to go out fishing. You don't love her like that.
That's what I'm talking about. It's about going a little emo sometimes too, you know? I don't know. Music is so weird. Like, I feel like I've never met any song like this ever before in my life, but then this just is like, this is just as valid as anything else. The music is the way to like express your anxiety and kind of get rid of it. But then you've put so much of an emotional context into something that then upon even like mostly after releasing it or even thinking about releasing it, that's when the anxiety kind of bubbles up again, and you're just like, holy fucking shit. Like, if people don't like this, it's not just something I made, it's like something that I used as therapy to get some shit off my mind. So if people hate that, then it like invalidates my entire like base insecurities around what I was making in the first place. So that's kind of crazy for sure. But I think in general, it's like maybe a good practice to just make art and not worry about whether or not it's ever perceived by anybody, because the first step, it's kind of like similar to how a tree for the first like 50 years or whatever absorbs a whole bunch of CO2, but then it hits a point where it starts secreting it again. And so it's like the creation of the music is that process of like taking a lot of this bad stuff and recycling it and turning it into good stuff. And then the actual distribution and, you know, like general consumption of art is where things can kind of flip back the other way, and then like the negative kind of seeps back out of it, which is crazy to say because I do like releasing music, but it can be stressful sometimes, you know. I always have this sneaking suspicion that every other musician knows that I'm a total fraud, you know? And so it's like, we also don't have a real grand piano in here, and some of the music that I make has a grand piano on it, and I don't want to be that guy that exposes myself, but it's not a fucking real piano. And I know, and I'm not being paranoid, that there are people out there that are like, well, actually, you know, they're like, that's not a real piano. But whatever, I think it's all about the creative process. If you want a sound, just do it. You can pay for that consequence later. And I'm sure that, you know, if it's good enough, like if you have an idea in your head and you're like, oh, well, I can't do it the right way, then if you stop doing something because you don't think you can do it right, then you're making a huge mistake and like sacrificing maybe a great piece of art in the process. If you have an idea, just do it. Use the shitty fucking flutes on Logic Pro, and they will sound like ass, but it's like, hey, you still have a flute part in your song, and that's what you wanted, and you got what you wanted, and that's awesome. It's really hard to build up sort of an outlet or some sort of like platform for yourself these days as an artist. And, you know, going back to that whole anxiety issue I was talking about, where the fun is in creating something, and then in the release and reception, you can kind of lose yourself and like be disheartened. Having like a platform already established, especially one like Mouth Breather, where I feel like I've created a space for me to be pretty vulnerable in like a silly, fun way. It allows me to like work and release on music and not care too much, while also knowing that like, hey, someone's going to listen to it, you know? And I think that's a huge privilege to have. So coming back to it is just kind of like, you know, I want to take advantage of that. Like, not everyone has that opportunity. So I really want to make sure I can use it. In order to make a career out of like exposing yourself emotionally, it's psychotic, man. It's totally psychotic. Like, why would you do that? But people do. It's just, I don't think it was ever meant to be like this, but for some reason, because of the way music is like monetized now, we're forced to like do something that's really personal and then like pray that it is not, I don't know, it doesn't bomb really hard.